must be some kind of way out of here. Say the joker to the thief. There's too much confusion. I can't get no relief.
Hello, everybody. Today I have a friend that I've known for quite some time, but this is the first time that we've actually met live. So, welcome, Dick. So today I want to try and keep this a little bit different for you because you've done so many interviews over the years. I don't want you to have to repeat too many of these SOG questions. But in a book that you wrote, which is not to do with the military, it involves stress, fear, and the human reaction to combat and stressful situations and how to deal with those. But first of all, I do recommend to everybody that they pick up these two books. And Dick is you're very accurate with every detail. So if people want a gritty book about SOG and those missions and Lynn Black and everybody else, they're ones to pick up. Where can they pick them up from?
You can get them on Amazon, order
Okay.
them straight from them, or you can order them from our website. If you order them from us, um, I'll sign them for you before it goes in the mail. Uh, it's also a few dollars cheaper if you get it from us rather than Amazon. Um, so we do that. We just drop the price down some and send it out to you. So.
Okay, I will add that link in the at the end of the chat here. So I think first of all, when you're a team leader in SOG, and I know that both you and Lynn figured out that keeping your team constantly active was probably what kept you guys alive. So even though your days off, that you would go up onto Marble Mountain. So can we just talk a little bit about why you and Lynn felt that more training than standard was better for your team? If we can just touch on that.
Okay. When I moved down to, well, Lynn moved down to uh, CCN from Fubai. So we down at CCN, we had more time together. Our schedules just coincided closer so that we had time between missions to talk. At Fubai, we were gone all the time. We'd see each other in passing. So um, we were at the club one evening and we were having some philosophical nectar to drink. And as we were talking and kind of exploring with each other the psychology of battle and our thoughts around that, and one of the things that we agreed on was that we needed to practice more, uh, not sit around here for a week waiting on the next mission, because if you're not doing anything, it gives the demons and things from the last mission an opportunity to come in and distract you. So we came up with an idea of putting together what we called the Black Dynamite um, Hunting Club and our hunting expeditions. So we decided to take a few of his team members, a few of my team members. We would put them together and sneak out of camp at night and go out in the local area, set up ambushes or whatever, small ones, to test different techniques. Could we really ambush a group just using pistols with silencers on them, or Sten guns, or could we do it with just demolitions? And how much did we need? And then, as a kind of a side effect, we might come to you and say, Jason, we've got a little expedition coming up here in a couple of days. I know you work back here in the rear. You don't ever get a chance to go out on the other side of the wire. Um, are you interested? Maybe going out with us in a couple of days, and we'll go out here in the local area, have a little ambush. You'll get to shoot somebody, and get a little a little taste of combat, and then like Patton said one time, when you're bouncing your grandkid on your knee in the future at some point, and she says, "Well, what did you do in Vietnam, Grandpa?" And you can say, man, I went out with SOG teams and ambushes and all this kind of stuff. So every once in a while, we'd get somebody who, would say, hey, yeah, I'd like to try that, just to experience it one time. But anyway,
How did
go
that
for it.
go? I mean, those people, those willing people that were like desk clerks or whatever they were, I'm sure they must have crapped their pants. Were like, you guys do this all the time? Like, oh yeah, this is actually easy, you
Yeah,
know. And, and I guess that you know, Marble Mountain is really known best for FOB for, but it's also known for when it was overrun. Now, what the public need to know is that there were bad guys living in well, they weren't living there, but they were inside of Marble Mountain in caves. And
right,
also, after reading your book and talking to the other guys, is there were some monks, because there were monks in there. There's a
right,
big Buddha, right? Um,
right.
a carved Buddha in the Marble Mountain, and some of those monks were pro NVA and VC, right? So that's got to be tricky when you have a monk that I mean, that's a religious guy, but he's like, what do you like? That's got to be a odd circumstance.
It it's a little odd, but we were SOG teams, and what would happen is periodically your team would get assigned to man a combat outpost up on top of Marble Mountain. So you might be up there for a week. During the daytime, you didn't have much going on, but as soon as it started to get dark, the snipers would start shooting, at your team. And then sometime that night, the NVA would actually come up and try to get you. So you have, a lot of contact while you were up there. I started taking my teams when I would be up there out in the daytime, and we would go down to the caves, and we would go search out the caves and, find some Vietnamese or North Vietnamese and terminate them. And the monks just stayed out of our way because they didn't want to get caught in the crossfire. So we did that as part of it was training, part of it was to reduce the number that would be coming after us that night. Um, and there was one cave opening um, on the peak that our team was usually on that was directly across from us, about 50 meters from us, but they could come up and shoot out of that hole directly on top of the peak that we were on, and particularly the fighting positions we had around on that side. Um, so we would go in and try to catch them in there. A lot of times we would see it just be covered with blood from the ones we'd hit, the night before when they were shooting at us. Um, so yeah, the monks were there, and then there's a story there when Eldon Bargewell and I were on the same team and had a mountain yard team, and a couple of guys wanted to go down to the village, and I was a little nervous about that, but they finally talked me into it. And Bargewell said, as these 4 or 5 guys were leaving, they're going to get in trouble. I know them. I've been on this team longer than you. They're going to get in trouble. So anyway, they went on down. They'd been gone, maybe 20 minutes. It was a steep climb down the mountain. And we heard some gunshots. And immediately they were on the radio saying, no problem, no problem. We come back. And Bargewell said, they did something. They did something they were not supposed to do. And when they got back up on top, Bargewell said, what's in the bag? One of them had a sandbag. So what's in the sandbag? And you could see there was blood dripping out of the bottom of it. So the interpreter looked at Bargewell and said, "Monk dog." He said, "What?" He said, "We shoot monk dog." So they had the monk's dog in the sandbag, and Bargewell said, "What are you going to do with it?" "We eat. Tonight we eat." So that night they cooked it up with some rice and stuff, and so the monks were not happy about that. So
Wow, that's yeah, and another SOG guy told me that at Quezon, that the yards that rats were part of their menu. They had
oh yeah,
no problem, cooking them up. And for us, Westerners, like, you're eating what? Oh, no, no, just wait. And I'm sure it tasted okay, but to us, a rat or a dog is not really, on the menu, right?
yeah. The worst thing that I ate, and I would recommend that you never eat, is a monkey. The worst taste, because, and it's hard for you to convince yourself you're not eating a person when you're eating a monkey. It has
Yeah.
a very distinct smell to it. The meat taste is stringy. It has a strange taste to it. And then in the back of your mind, you're thinking, this is probably what a person tastes like, you know. So the rats and squirrels and things like that, that's not a big deal. Monkey's different. My
Actually,
experience.
in the collection of the Bargewell, photographs that I had in my book, or have in my book, there is a picture of a monkey that has been cooked. So now I'm thinking about that, right? One We were talking off air about this, so if we can just touch about on this, is the dominant response theory, and I said that correctly without getting screwed up. So, can we just kind of touch on that, and about how that you applied that, or how a team leader? I'm sure there were other team leaders that did the same thing, but can we touch on that a little bit?
Sure. Um, and you hear it referred, by various names, and probably the most common name that you hear is like muscle memory. We need to practice so that we can build muscle memory so that we do the thing correctly without having to think. And what's happening is inside your brain, you're wiring together, putting the right wiring in there and building a super highway to perform some particular task so that you don't have to think about it. You just do it. Um, and that's what happens, whether you intend to build it or not. You have these pathways in your brain, and something happens that triggers a response. And whatever you've got setting up there at the top of that hierarchy, that's what comes out. Uh, and with stressful events, very often what's setting up there on top is not what you want to come out. It's not what you want to do. Um, I did a lot of work with my guys um, on stress, on the human reaction to combat, and one of the things that I told them was that we spend hours and hours and shooting thousands of times on the range and learning how to get a good sight picture, where to align the sights so that you can hit the target. And we practice that over and over. And we build up this dominant response. So that's what we intend to do when we see a bad guy. But when stress kicks in, it changes your eyesight. It changes how your eyes focus, and
Wow.
you can't see the sights. They're just blurry. So all this practice you've been doing now, you can't see them, and that freaks you out because you have this response that says align, get the side alignment, so you can hit the target, but you can't align them because you can't see it. And that's why people miss their target when they're using shoot back targets. And we had a lot of shoot back targets in Southeast Asia. If you know the target's going to shoot back at you, it runs your stress level up, and now you can't focus. And there are a lot of other things that it does to you, like your fine motor coordination um, falls apart. And I've got a story that the very first firefight I was in, um, I had to reload, had to get rid of the magazine that was in the weapon and put a new one in. I couldn't get it in the magazine well. I couldn't hold it steady enough to reload the weapon because I was getting shot at so much at the time. I eventually got it in there, but I was just shocked that something that was so easy every day out on the range to do, when somebody was shooting at me, it wasn't easy to do anymore. So there's a whole series of things that stress has an impact on when you're in combat or when you're about to die, whatever it is. Uh, the stress just changes how you do everything. Now, you can train a lot of that out of you. So one of the things I say in the book, one of the SOG principles is practice, 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 and get to the point where it's automatic. It's in this dominant response hierarchy. You can you can close your eyes and still put the magazine in the weapon. You know exactly where it is. You don't have to see it. You don't have to feel it. Excuse me. You can do that because you practice so much and train so much. In fact, the team leader, the team I was on for that first mission, when we got back, he said he pulled me off to the side and he said, Lieutenant, if you don't get so you can change magazines faster when people are shooting at you, you're going to die. It got my attention. It's, I can see that, based on how much trouble I had with that first one. Yeah, I'm going to be doing a lot of practicing and doing it with my eyes closed, doing it in the dark, changing things around so that I can still get it in there and shoot. And I started, once I became the team leader, then I started training my people on all these, different things that you have to deal with when you're in a firefight.
Now the Indige were, I mean, I know that they were brave guys. Was their level of acceptable stress different than the Americans, meaning that they'd had a much harder life than many of the Americans that were coming over, right? And they were used to, I'm sure, and for those that don't know, the indigenous people have been trodden on by the North Vietnamese and the South. They are just not well liked. So they've had a tough life from day one. So that's the question. Were they better equipped to deal with some stressful situations than the Americans?
I don't know in the beginning, but for example, I was thinking about my team after we came back from the first mission, and I was thinking like you are, how can they go out and do this? I mean, they probably been going out on these missions for 2 years before I got here. They're going to go out on these missions for a year with me. I'm going to leave. Another guy's going to come in, and they're going to go. How can they keep doing that? I mean, what's going on? I mean, when I was in school, my goal was to be have a doctorate in chemistry. So I had studied chemistry, but I'm watching what's going on, with these guys and thinking, I need to know more about psychology. Why, how can they do this? How can they manage it? And obviously discovered that it makes a difference if you've been out on some missions and still willing to go. Now, with the Americans, you could quit after the first mission. You could come back in and say, I'm not doing that again. I I didn't realize what these missions are like. I'm not doing this again.
Now,
And
is that I've heard that said many times to me, but is that really truthful? That if a guy went out and he said, "I'm just not mentally equipped,"
yeah,
they honestly were not looked down upon. Like that's
well, they would be moved.
yeah,
I mean, in some cases, they might just move to a different job there in the camp.
right.
But in other cases, and I think it's book two where Dick Meadows came in and became my boss. That was the first thing we did was he gave me a stack of files that first evening and he said, read through these because tomorrow morning we're going to bring these guys in one at a time. And some of them we're going to say, uh, you're done. There's going to be a helicopter leaving this afternoon. You're going back to Special Forces. We're going to send you back down into training and they'll assign you to a Special Forces unit somewhere because you you never seem to go on a mission. You're always sick the day you're supposed to go out. You hurt your back. You find all kind of excuses not to go. When you do go, you're out there for one day and you come back and you don't accomplish the mission. And so you're not the person who is a good SOG operator. You need to go somewhere else. So there may be some great jobs for you somewhere else, but this is so particular and the requirements are so tough. If you screw up, you may get your other two Americans killed. The whole team may get lost. So we can't have you there if you don't want to do it and you're not skilled at doing it.
Wow.
So we sent a bunch of people home,
I
or
can,
not home, but
yeah, yeah. And I'm sure that there were a lot of gung ho types that thought I can do this,
oh yeah,
and big guys, and that they're 6 foot plus, and built like a football player, and when they get out there, they just fold. I mean, it was like in Lynn's story where his team leader is found crouched under a bush with his rosary beads, and Lynn's going, "What the, like
yeah,
what are you doing?" You know,
yeah,
and, no fault to that guy. I mean, but he shouldn't have been there, and he could have got everybody killed. And luckily, Lynn had the fortitude to say, "Okay, you're out. I'm in. I'm taking over." Right.
yeah,
But the going back to training, we talked a little bit off air about the instinctive shooting. Um, and I thought it was very educational for myself about in the beginning of the training. So can we just touch on that?
sure. Um, when I was at Fort Bragg before I went to the Vietnam, we went through a course, a formalized course that was called Quick Kill, and it was designed to teach us to be able to sometimes people call it point shoot, just react and be able to hit the target without aiming, without using the sights. And, so they took us out to start the training and they gave us all of BB guns. And we thought, what? We're about ready to go to Vietnam and you're giving us BB guns. But and then, the instructor said, this is what you're going to do. And he threw a metal disc up in the air, took his BB gun, shot from the hip, and he was hitting it every time as it was falling. And he said, we're going to start with this big one and we're going to get smaller and smaller and smaller. And then we're going to go to little tiny silhouettes. And when you get good with that, we're going to take you down this trail we have out in the woods here, and targets are going to pop up at you, and you're going to shoot them with your M16. And we're going to teach you how to do it just instantly. No aiming, you point and you hit the target. And we spent a couple of weeks doing that, and it was amazing what you could do when you finish that training and how much faster, excuse me, you can engage a target. Once we got in country, it made a difference with the people who had been through that training. Lynn had gone through it too, but it's just you want SOG people, most of them fires from the hip. I mean, you could just point it, because most of the targets, 20 meters or so from you or less, and you could hit them. If the target's on out there a ways, then you've got to come up and aim. But if they're close, you don't waste time aiming, because you can just knock them off so fast just by pointing and shooting.
And we're talking about like a millisecond, of time between life and death, which that's
Well, yeah,
hesitation.
yeah, and there's a saying about um, during during that millisecond, you have the rest of your life to think about what might have happened if you had done it correctly. The rest of your life being that millisecond. So, you know, but it's the rest of your life, because you're going to go down.
Wow.
Mhm. And then, you learn a lot in the lounge talking to the more experienced guys. And I had this E7 take me aside, right, the first day or two. Uh, and we were having a drink and talking, and he said, I'm going to tell you something, Lieutenant. Never, ever shoot anybody less than 4 or 5 times. You would be surprised how many SOG operators have been killed by dead NVA. They shot them, they were on the ground, they walked by them, and the NVA shoots them in the back because he ain't dead. You shoot him 4 or 5 times, he goes down. If he flinches, you shoot him 4 or 5 more times. You make sure he's dead before you get anywhere around him, or
Wow.
you'll be the one that's dead. So you're learning things like that. Shoot fast, shoot a lot of times. Um, don't make assumptions about, people being dead.
I know that with the SAS that they have a guy whose specialty is to mop up. So
Yeah.
I had the interesting interaction with a SAS guy coming back on a flight from England, and I could see the paperwork that he was reading, and not that I was being nosy, but I couldn't help but read SAS, and he had been a former SAS soldier, and I said, talking to him about double tapping and all that kind of stuff, and I was living in England during the Iran or the Iranian embassy in London when the SAS were called in, and he said, to give you an example, he said, if I was there and I saw you, he said I would empty my entire clip into you, and my face kind of because he was like such a professional man, like a doctor, and with no expression at all. And I thought I just slid into my seat. But I guess he thought, well, if you want to know, I'll tell you, right?
Yeah.
But so that's why I bring that up about you never assume. But now, as a complete side shift, now it's been brought to my attention by another SAW guy that he feels that the current U.S. military does not have adequate jungle warfare training. So my question to you is, are you concerned about that at the moment, that there isn't enough of that? He has offered his and he still does actively work with the military in like a training, showing them techniques, and he's tried to tell them more about the lessons learned from SAW. So I'm curious about your comments on that.
I've always thought that one of the things the military does is they pick a theater for war, and everything gets diverted that way, whether there's a war there or not, and we start moving in that direction. So even though we could see we'd been in the jungle for a long time and everything was camouflage or OD, we see all this stuff. Like when we started doing the desert training that I mentioned to you earlier, I mean, people looked at that and said, why are we wasting our time
Really?
learning how to operate in the desert? That's not where we're going to fight. The next war is still going to be in Europe. We still need to be wearing, using camouflage colors and the woodland patterns and all this stuff because that's where the war is going to be. The Middle East, we're not going to fight there. So we'll take off. And if you look at pictures, particularly early on, even later, of units in the Middle East, they have on a desert, set of fatigues, that's desert camouflage pattern. Everything else is OD
Yeah.
because we haven't changed the equipment. They're still wearing OD rucksacks, OD LBE and pistol belts and all that kind of stuff because we didn't have the desert. Now everything is desert. We don't, and I'm just, on the surface here, but with equipment and stuff, we don't even have the right color to go to the jungle. So if we need to go there, we at least need to be able to get ourselves in the right uniform. But it's also very different in the jungle. I mean, the training is different. Um, and you don't just learn, how to operate in a jungle overnight. We need to start now, particularly for a whole army. Um, we need to be doing some training, for these different theaters that we might be in, the jungle being one of them. So, yeah, and one of the things that, and I'll be careful how I say this, but I still go back to a lot of the special ops units and go in and I spend time talking to them. And one of the things that I asked them that they've been thinking about is what happens when you have an electromagnetic pulse from a nuclear device hit? It knocks out all of your electronic gear. No more night goggles, no more drones, no more, all this electric stuff. You want to navigate, you have to get out a magnetic compass and a map to try to find out where you are and navigate. You can't do it with GPS. GPS, all that stuff's gone. You can't talk to each other like you and I are talking now electronically. And so I said, hey, how are you going to do that? And so what they want to know is SOG guys didn't have any of this stuff. How could you do what you did without all the electronics? And I said, it's something you can't learn overnight. But let me give you some examples of how we operated, how I would find you. If you're out there in the dark, I will find you. There are things that will happen, and you'll never know that I'm standing next to you when everything starts to fade out and go black for you. Yeah.
I feel like I'm back on the airplane talking to as I slide down my seat now. But yeah, and to feel so that is what this other SOG guy is saying, that we're so far away from that now, and the learning curve has to be applied sooner than later. And he was saying, while we still have you guys, like with the vast experience that SOG men had with primitive, I can say that, primitive gear, you were able to obtain and follow through many missions, and yes, SOG lost a lot of men, but it was so. And I'm just going to do a little twist here, and I will say this so that you don't have to say it. I don't think people should be more aware that if there's a big war, it's going to be a war of tech. And there's one country on the planet, China, who is so technically advanced. And the people that I've talked to said, we don't even know what they have. So that's kind of attached to your comment that if you become so reliant on tech, and there's something so simple as pressing a button and suddenly you're lost. That's your momentary lapse, like you were saying, of the instinctive training. If all your training is gone from one press of someone's button, then what? That's
Yeah.
like, that's like going into a boxing ring and you've been shadow boxing for 10 years. You're an expert, but you've never been punched in the head before,
Yeah.
right? So that's what scares me, not Russia.
Yeah. So we still have a lot of work to do. Um, and but if I go back to one of your comments about um, using the SOG guys, there's a handful left,
I know.
and every day. I mean, I was talking to John Myers a couple days ago, and I said it's like being back in SOG. I mean, every couple of days you get notified somebody died, somebody's
Yeah,
been killed, they're gone.
yeah.
Because it's not that people are killing us now, it's just, you know, it's that time of life where we start to fall by the wayside. So if there's something you want from SOG guys, you need to get it quick. We need to get it in writing. We need to get it in the training manuals. Because there's another world out there um, where the SOG stuff works.
And also, to attach to my last comment, is there are certain nationalities that don't think like us as far as generation, like our one generation. They're thinking they think in such a different format. It's a multi-generational approach that if we can't do it, then my grandson will try and do it. If he can't do it, and that's their end goal, is to continue down that path, and they think as a collective unit. um,
Mhm.
and that's the danger. After your learning, after you've left the world, a lot of your things that you've learned, they'll be passed on to maybe a few people, but the objective for them is still on that path, right? So that, but anyway, I won't. That's where I can spin off into a tangent. So we've talked about the instinctive shooting and the dominance response theory, and the additional training that you and Lynn did, where you said that downtime is actually bad. Because then there've been many famous military leaders that said the worst thing you can do is have your guys stay in one same place for too long. They become lazy, and yeah, so I can, or lose their edge. Now, I want to be careful on this next topic because it does involve some people that you were close with. Um, so I'm going to ask the question in an open-ended way, and that is, did you see firsthand that fellow SOG men had reached a level where they were taking unnecessary chances, and that you could see that there was uh, they had seen too much. They were too, tightly wound, and that you were concerned. Did that happen?
Yes. Um, in the stress book, I talk about in there that we all have a limit on how much stress we can manage, how much we can recover from. Uh, and if you get pushed beyond your limit, you may be in a place that you can't get back from. But for sure, you will start making a lot of mistakes that can get you killed, as well as other people. But we're also in a military that doesn't accept that. Uh, so if you get labeled as having gotten too much stress and you need to recover some, your career may be over. You know, you can't do this anymore. I mean, even on simple physical things, um, like come back from a mission and get a pair of forceps and start pulling pieces of shrapnel out of yourself because you don't want to go to the medics. You don't want people to know. You don't want to be labeled as, I mean, he's all shot up. Um, you don't want to get disqualified and taken off of a team, you know, because you've been hit. You don't want people to know you've had a concussion that might take you off the team. Um, People like SOG operators and the special operators today, um, they have to pass and maintain this very high level of fitness. Uh, your eyes have to work well. Your ears have to, I mean, I was lucky with my ears because in the old days, they put you in a little room that had a little window in it, and the person administering the hearing test to you was sitting right outside that window in front of a little panel, and he would reach over and flip a switch, and then he'd look to see if you had pushed the button. You know, so you start watching him flipping the switches. When he flips one, you push the button, meaning I hear that. I mean, I passed hearing tests like that for years, knowing a lot of times I didn't hear anything, but uh, to be a tier one guy, to be able to be on a Halo team, and some of the other requirements, you had to have the perfect hearing. You had to have the eyesight. So people will do things to try to stay on teams that can be dangerous to the team. So we have to create an environment so it's okay for me to say, yeah, I've got a lot of shrapnel in me right now. I'll heal, but I might need a few weeks to get healed up, from those wounds or whatever has happened to me.
So I want to move to another chapter of your life, and that is that uh, after your military career, which did extend way past the Vietnam days, that you but also in the military, you were teaching people about stress and being a team leader. But after you left the military, you began to turn that into a career. So where I'd like to turn this now is that you've just told us that there are certain signs that you have to watch out for stress, and that we all have that level that we can tolerate and function properly. Now, you've done talks in front of huge companies, and are there any basic things that we could talk to the people about knowing your levels, and talk a little bit about your arsenal model and what that breaks down to?
Yes, if we get some training, encouragement, and the opportunity along the way to be able to heal, to be able to say, I've got an issue with my ears or whatever. I need some treatment there, but I want to stay operational. Um, as long as I can meet some minimal requirements, um, that will help us. But it also helps if I know how to assess myself and what to do about it. So one of the things that I created years ago was an assessment called Arsenal, um, with each letter standing for a particular stress resilient best practice. Uh, and I found that if people would answer those questions honestly, it would create a report for them that they could look at, and it would say, here's where you are on being aware, both self-aware and situationally aware. This is where you are. Here's some things you might want to do to build that up and make it stronger. So you need a certain amount of sleep, you need exercise, you need nutrition. So you need each of these 7 best practices. And I'm giving you a snapshot of where you are today. And here's a plan to take any of those that's low and build them up. And if you get those up higher, you can run faster, jump higher, perform better, manage stress better, in whatever job you're in. So I have athletes that use it because they want to be a higher performing athlete. I have people who are struggling because of the stress in the job that they're in, whether it's military or civilian, and they want to be able to learn how to manage that so they can perform better and have a better life. So it covers the whole range. It also, excuse me, it also gives you an indication if you might be getting close to a situation where you might harm yourself. The VA has some assessments like that, and people hate them because they start answering these questions, and every 5th question is, have you thought about harming yourself in the last 2 weeks? Have you thought about how you're going to harm yourself? And you get all these questions in there. The people are so scared when they finish because they're going to throw me out of the army or whatever if I say yes to any of these questions. So they're afraid of it, so they lie on the questionnaire. With the arsenal, you never get asked that directly, but it is getting a feel for where you are and saying, given where you are, here's some things to do in each of these 7 areas that you can go do, starting today. And then you can take it again and see how that picture changes and know that you're making progress. And you'll notice a difference as soon as you start doing these things. You'll know that you're getting stronger.
And that's in your book, the stress effect.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that sounds
I just happen to have one. And you can get that on Amazon, or you can get it from our website. And but it not only has that in it, but
right.
it's loaded with techniques. And for different stages of life, there are different kinds of stressors that you have to deal with. It's in here about how do you do that? How do you deal with some of these things? How do you prepare for what's going to happen later on as you get older? What are the steps that you take? Um, you might not fly on an airplane again after you read the introduction to this. And but Captain Sully did a great job as he landed that plane in the Hudson. But it's there, and there are so many things out there that stress us that if we have some good techniques like breathing, I
Yeah.
found it very stressful to be going in on a mission and you're almost to the landing zone. And, as the team leader, I'm going to step out on the skid of the helicopter, assistant team leader stepping out on the other side. A couple of my guys are going to get out there with me, and we're flying in to this hole in the jungle, and we're going to land in it. And there may be bad guys all the way around it. And when you find out, I mean, you're standing out there in front of the world with no protection. So you're coming in, so it can raise the stress level a little, particularly if they start shooting at you when you're coming in. So I found breathing, box breathing. There are various things they call it, but box, because if you think about If you inhale through your nose slowly for 4 seconds, okay. Now you pause for 4 seconds, and then you exhale through your mouth for 4 seconds, pause for 4 seconds, and then start the cycle again. And it's very important that you inhale through your nose, you exhale through your mouth, because one of the things that's happening is when you inhale through your nose, you're putting air into your sinus cavities and stuff in there. That air stays there, while you pause, and while it's in there, some nitric oxide is created. So you exhale through your mouth. When you inhale through your nose the next time, now you're taking that nitric oxide that you just created in your cavities, and you're taking it down inside your lungs. And when it gets in your lungs, it gets into your bloodstream, and it relaxes your arteries, it relaxes you, it works on your vagus nerve. All of a sudden, your stress level starts to come down with each cycle that you do, and it's relaxing you more. And then you can think better, you can see better. And I used to use that starting in on that approach. I would just start doing the box breathing because I can still look around, I can still talk, I can still hear, um, but I'm relaxing myself because I can't worry about if the bullets are going to hit me. I have to focus on my job as a leader, telling people where to go and what we're going to do. And I can't do that if I'm distracted by the bullets coming in. So I need to relax. And then I tell my civilian clients that the next time Jason comes in and starts yelling at you, start box breathing. He can't see you doing it. You're standing there, you're box breathing, your stress level's going down, and he can yell all he wants to. You're standing there and you're mellowed out. And when he finishes yelling, he turns around and he leaves, and you're good. Now you can think about what he said and what you don't want to do again that really made him upset. But you stayed calm, during the process. And, anytime you start to encounter a stressor, you do that. I was a scuba diver forever. And one of the things they taught you in scuba school was you start to get stressed, then stop what you're doing. Take a breath. Think about what you're doing and then act. Because most people stop and then act.
Mhm.
And they never think about the in between. They just go from one thing to another, and they're not doing the right things. So that's one of the things, taught my guys in SOG. Breathe, do the breathing, but if it's really bad, stop, think, and breathe, and then act on using these techniques that we've been teaching each other. So there are a lot of things like that that are in the book that you can use every day to help manage your stress.
And you know what? I mean, I'm at the age, I'm 55 now. My parents are like your age. So I was raised where, and my grandfathers both served in the military. So there was a lot of that man up attitude and,
Okay.
get on with it, and that kind of stuff. And there was no, I don't want to say there was no room for failure, but there was just, what are you whining about? Right. So I've always been very open with my own struggles with, anxiety at times and feelings of being low or whatever. And I think for a lot of men, they find it so hard to admit that they're struggling, and then it's always in the shadows, or it's not. I suppose what I'm trying to say is, someone who is low or depressed is not always what you would envision. Someone can be interactive, they can be laughing with you, but the moment they get home into their own private world, it's hell. And this chat has really gone the way I wanted it to, because you have experienced moments of your life none of us or many of us will never ever or have never experienced. So to hear you say that you use this breathing, a simple application, will help out a lot of people. Um, and where I'm going with this is, guys, it's okay to take a moment, go outside, go and sit in your car, go in the washroom, give yourself a couple minutes to, compose yourself, do a little bit of this box breathing, and it will be better. Don't sit there with all your adrenaline pumping and your cortisol. You're going to, as Dick was saying, that you're going to make a response, which is not going to be a logical one. So, um, and also, I know another big part of your life has been, working out and exercising. You've kept that also. I'm sure that you would advise people that a healthy body gives you, a healthy mind as well. Now we're at the 56-minute mark, and I try and keep these to an hour. So, we had talked about as a closing part here. I know it's very, and it's something to do with mental health as well. For veterans who are struggling, do you have any advice for them, or is there like an outreach or something? I know it's a big part of your awareness as well.
Yeah, if a couple of things. One, you can go to our website, and I also have one called the Stress Effect. That's the name of it.com. You can go there. We have all kind of organizations listed that you could contact and work with, but there are also things you can do yourself. I mean, maybe not the heavy lifting, but you can get started doing things yourself. Um, if you're a veteran and you're struggling, contact me. I'll send the arsenal to you, or send you a link to the arsenal. You can go take it. It cost about $200,000, but that's okay. No, not really. I'll send you a link, and you can go take it. And we can talk about it. And we can get you started. We're all in in this together. So, yeah, I created that because I wanted to give you a tool that you could use, and you can do that. Do the box breathing, and get some sleep, exercise, pay attention to what's going on with you, do those best practices from the arsenal, and it's all going to help. So,
and stay away from the drugs and the drink.
yeah, yes,
That's only going to cloud your judgment, right?
exactly.
Ryan, even if you can get off the couch and go for a walk around the block, and then the next day try and do a little bit more, but you got to slowly do something each day, right, in that direction.
One of the things I tell everybody, always keep moving and moving forward. One of the things, one of the missions in the, I think, book one or book two, Bargewell and I were together, and we were just being overrun by the NVA, and we're trying to get away from them, and we're fighting and withdrawing and trying to get away, and we came into a bunch of rocks, big rocks, and rocks for the most part stop bullets. They'll ricochet off of them, but the rock get down behind it. But so we stopped. I thought, we've got a place now we can make our stand and we can defend. So we're going to stop moving and we're going to defend from here. And then I noticed what the NVA did was they started to move around it. And the thing that happened in my mind was I saw this big amoeba just flowing around its dinner, which was us, because we had stopped. We were in the rocks and they were just surrounding us. Now they're all the way around us. and they're coming in to finish us off. The only way we had at that point to get away was we had to go vertical. So we were lucky when helicopters came in and dropped the ropes and pulled us up through the canopy, and we got out. But I learned at that point, don't stop. You gotta keep moving. And, I told the group a couple of weeks ago, I said, as comfortable as your recliner is, don't sit in that recliner every night and not do anything. You have to keep moving. The less you move, the sooner you won't be able to move.
Yeah.
Trust me on that. You will lose your ability to move. So, like you were saying a few minutes ago, get out, walk around the house, walk to the mailbox and back. Do some kind of exercise to keep moving. So be careful about how much rest you get. You need to exercise, you need to keep moving, and it'll keep you going longer. So.
They're all very valid points. So for today, I think we're going to conclude this for the public. Just want to talk to you for a couple of minutes off air. Yeah, and I'll add those links to everything that you've said. I'll be sure to give out your personal phone number. I'm joking. But I will add the link to the details, and anybody who is having difficulty getting in touch with Dick, they can just contact me, and I will make that happen for you. So thank you again, sir, for being on here. I hope I've asked you some different questions. It hasn't been a dry interview. So
no, this is great. I appreciate it, and we're getting the word out there.
Yeah.
Somebody that's going to listen to this is going to appreciate having a place to call, someone to talk to.
Yeah.
Or they will have picked up some little technique that we discussed here and use it, and it'll make a difference in their life.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, thank you again. And I'm just going to talk to you for a couple of minutes here. So we'll talk to you guys later. Bye.
Thank you.
In this dirty old part of the city where the sun refused to shine, people tell me it ain't no use in trying.